Says I'm live. We're live. And I'm going to advertise to my other locations as I do.
There's the notification.
Wow, it looks clear.
Told you.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we did something right the other day.
You did.
You helped me.
How?
I don't know.
I didn't do anything.
You kind of motivated me to do it, I think,
Oh, okay.
at that
I'll
moment.
take that. I'll take that.
Right.
I'll accept that.
So, I've simplified this process now. I don't need to say anything. Just click and post. And go to good old Twitter X. Do the same thing. Okay, well, let's see here. Um, 3 people watching there, or the chat room. We got to do that. Pop it out. And there's nobody here yet, but there's a few people listening. At least there was a few seconds ago. So, um, get on with it, right? Oh, you know what? I don't think I actually named it right.
What'd you name
I
it?
named it my standard name, 3SPM something. I could probably fix that. I don't know if I can.
Oh, yeah. It says Sawyer 3 SPM
Yeah,
broadcast.
yeah. Maybe can I fix that, you think? I can try.
Does it matter right now?
No, except for, yeah, because it's, I like the title being dumb, that was dumb. Because then people know what I'm going to be talking about.
Do you. Yeah.
Maybe this one has to be hidden a little bit. No, not really. I don't think that's the case, but so what? I guess I'm ready. So what we were gonna label this was something about um, the vehicle,
Oh,
chemistry, the
chemistry.
mind,
Chemistry of the vehicle affecting the mind.
the chemistry of the vehicle affecting the mind, and I believe it goes in reverse as well. How the mind can affect the chemistry of the vehicle. In fact, I think that was the primary that was illustrated in this tape. tape 253, recorded on the third month, March 30th, 1987. But the reason I'm saying that is because the whole thing was about, oh gosh, what was that first? Confidence. Having no confidence, and that, um, and I know that sounds really, like the lower forces like to think of that as negative. Um, and it would be, except when it's actually, that you're connected with uh, the highest source you can imagine. And and that if it's not, to follow that up just a little bit, if it ends up you feel that way about somebody or something, to where you're going after it with a full belief in that, and you would always keep your mind open to other things that would come to you, and any things that you would question about it. You know, that it doesn't feel quite right the way that you think it should be. Sometimes that's um, it's just, actually, I think Tiendo talked about it as seeing through things. And it doesn't mean that you're an adept or anything necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying that, because some people can see through things that other people can't. So it's not a judgment in that way as well, or a comparison or a competition or anything. But one person could say something, and well, Doe talked about it in this tape, how if an older member, he wanted to have an older member visit him, or physically, he was asking for that. And he tried very hard to arrange the circumstances that he felt would make it, I think, an environment of mind and body, to where if T wanted to send one of T's helpers to show up and physically be a parent, that he wanted to be ready for that. He wanted to see if he could. He wondered if that was part of his task, that when he got ready to do that, that maybe that would be what would happen. I know that he was thinking that way at one point, and he was thinking about all ways. I mean, he was like totally in thought about things related to the class and moving forward and what's next, and trying to implement T's mind the whole time. And he learned a lot about confidence, and losing his, because he had a lot of confidence in himself. You can't be an opera singer and a teacher of university choruses, and not have a certain authority about you, a certain presence. And Doe felt like that actual event that he was trying to work to have, of the physical presence of older members from the next level, or some members from the next level, in their vehicles, not in human vehicles. He felt like it didn't happen, and he understood, I believe, that it didn't happen because it couldn't happen until the students had no longer had confidence in themselves and were trusting. Trust is the key word here. Trusting the Doe's mind and T's mind, and that's exactly what Jesus was teaching. exactly what Jesus was teaching, that his relationship with his Father was one of total trust. And and Tiendo felt like his vehicle was artificially inseminated in some way by the next level, so that it wasn't born of, uh, well, fornication. I mean, that word is, I don't know if that's the right word for it, but, human reproductive methods. So, and that's why T and O, while I'm talking about it, were in favor of thinking that it was an advancement for people to be doing in vitro fertilization, and so anyway, but uh, confidence was something that, I mean, Doe used examples of a number of students in this audio tape, and uh, and in this tape he's talking about some students that um, conquered their main booger, main Luciferian uh, angel, Lucifer or one of his angels, or I don't know, which we called boogers. And those are the same ones that you can think of now as the space aliens that are human equivalent. And they need human materials, they need human service to them. Otherwise, they can't fly their spacecrafts very far, or I don't know what all the reasons are. But and they can't have new vehicles because their vehicles are going to perish, where next level vehicles don't perish. And so I'm going down the road, right? But the rabbit holes, right, as they call them. But well, I don't think this is a rabbit hole. This is more like a wormhole in space. I think I'm going to compare it to that because I know where it came from. It's a blob of information that's floating among us.
So you're going through the tape.
Yeah, I want to go, right, going through the tape, right, right. The information is coming through the tapes. That's right. That's right. And so the words are the instrument of them. And what was interesting when I first started to think that way, that that when I learned a little bit about telecommunications or video, radio, and TV communications. I don't know about radio signals, but with TV signals, my understanding is, and I could be wrong about this, is that there's a carrier frequency, that the frequency that has the encoded video images on it rides on. And I was thinking of that as being like, the spirit, and then traveling on that. And the sun's rays are putting those frequencies out, right? And so the same thing with the audio, with the words. The words are what we formed out of our language, right? By the taking in of breath and the putting out of breath. And what a system. Holy smokes. And humans, think that, I don't know any humans that think they're getting close to making a human being or growing a human being even. I think they're trying. I have no doubt they're cloning, and they don't want to talk about those things though, because they're not popular among some people.
Well, it's not ethical either.
Not applicable?
Ethical.
Oh, ethical, right. Right, to clone another human vehicle. I don't know, it's not ethical about it.
Well, you certainly can't clone a spirit.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess not, but
So
maybe the
you're
way
just
that that's
making a body that doesn't have a soul or a spirit. That's what the horror movies are, you know.
yeah, right. That's what they're depicting. A body without a soul or a spirit, like a zombie, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, like if you make a body, I don't, you know, artificially,
Right. By like putting the parts together, like
right? Then how
taking a
does,
stomach from
where
this
does
dead
it,
body and then,
where
you
does it get consciousness from?
know, uh,
You put
well,
all the parts together, and
that's a
if
good
they,
question because the way that
well,
I
that's where
think,
the, you know, that's where the efficacy comes in, and why
right,
it's not allowed.
right, but I mean, what's to stop it from if you had a brain, right? If the brain is the genetic material that's harboring the mind,
Well, we
that's
don't know that.
well, I think we know that it's from T and O. I think they did talk about how the discarnates can take you over, right? So that's a form of the mind, a mind taking over the flesh and putting the thoughts in the head that they want to have, right? So that's one part of it, I guess. I mean, if you can clone, so one way to look at a clone possibility, at least that occurs to me right now, and I could be way out of track about this, but is that when all humans are doing the same thing and nothing's changing, you know, relatively speaking, uh, then you produced a whole bunch of clones that are plants. They're plant level life forms. Uh, and they have a root system, the tree of life, you know, true of the knowledge of good and evil. I believe that's the human kingdom, the human tree, the tree of their mind that, you know, that has to be taught everything. And that mind ends up going through the biology of the sperm and the egg uh, to bring the ancestry, the genes into the new vehicle, right? So that's and then that mind grows, and that's the same thing as the spirit that's growing from that experience. So if you take, like we were talking about, if you were taking the body parts and putting them together, would would that mean that there would be something the genetic mind associated with the body parts? You'd be getting potentially from all different people. And so that'd be a very confusing mix, you know, like let's say one person had a
Well, we've heard of people with heart transplants that, I mean, I don't know how many accounts of that I have heard, but I've heard a couple where they feel like they have remembered memories, or you know, like they have some awareness of that person from that organ.
right, right, and that sounds a little bit like when somebody loses a leg, they can for a long time. I don't know if it lasts forever, but they feel like they still have that leg there.
Yeah, they get phantom pains and
Oh, phantom pains, right? Huh.
or itches.
So that's
Like
so
you'll
that would be.
swear, you know, you don't have a right foot, but you'll swear that it's itching.
Oh, I see.
And like you can't itch it because it's not there.
Oh, I wonder if they can itch it with their mind.
Yeah, I wonder. I haven't.
Or if they reach down to the approximate area.
I know that one. I know that one person that I follow on YouTube. I know they've talked about their their amputated foot.
Missing limb.
Yeah, but I can't remember if they talked about itching. I've just read that people that like
Right. So,
you know
but that would be, that's the, you know, because see, the thing that I think would also be a problem with that is that whatever brain you use, if you were trying to build a human being
yeah
by taking the body parts and putting them together, um, that brain and probably all the other parts, unless it came from the same vehicle, well, maybe they do that. They take a dead body and they try to bring it back to life, right? That's what they would have to be able to do. So whatever parts were damaged, they'd have to install some new parts. And right, they get rejected a lot of times, so they have to take drugs to not reject them. And I can see why they might be rejected, because that mental programming, that genetic programming that's housed in the brain, in the consciousness, and the subconscious, of course, the most, the inner mind, what Tiendo called the inner mind, uh, uh, makes the heartbeat and stuff. Um, so if the brain is sending out all these commands and they're configured in a certain way, that that new heart doesn't communicate with very well. Maybe it communicates to some degree, but maybe it's because it's
gotta
got a
learn.
different genetic structure.
It's gotta learn.
Yeah, but maybe there's a certain amount of compatibility that can take place. And yeah, so that's anyway. So I don't doubt that there is a bunch of money being put into all this and above in terms of the biology and
Well,
developing human vehicles.
I know. I think it was Jared Kushner, who is, I think, Ivanka Trump's husband, was talking about keeping himself alive forever,
Hmm.
basically.
Right.
And this was like a year or two ago or something. And, putting money into making that happen. I don't know whether that means cryogenic freezing or. But he's on camera talking about it and how he lives in a time where, you can be immortal, basically.
Yeah, I think a lot of humans talk very big, but have very little substance to what they're taling about.
Yeah, but
And
I'm,
they've
I'm
been able to accomplish things.
my point is he's got money.
Yeah, he's got the money to put into it. Yeah, I know that's the case. I mean, yeah, it seems
How
like
much you're putting
it's
into it.
something that is kind of apparent. You know.
They're looking into it.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, let's get back to the tape. Well, this is related to the tape because you know, uh, like the tape has its different things that are in it, and so I'm just going to read some of the ideas that are being talked about in this tape 253 that
What
Doe
about
and the crew made.
that occult thing in tape 252,
What about that?
where he was saying that you could get trapped? Like that would be a distraction. Remember
I'm trying to.
that the occult study or something?
Oh yeah, yeah. You could get trapped in the occult study,
He didn't use
but I
that
forgot what his
word.
example. He didn't talk about it as an occult,
No,
right? He just yeah. I
the
forgot how he used that.
metaphysical.
Metaphysical. Oh yeah, good point. Because he said that at first when he met T, he thought that he was going to have to become more metaphysical, and he didn't really like that idea because he thought of metaphysical as being like talking about past lives and
Reincarnation.
reincarnation,
Yeah,
and he felt like there was a trap to that.
well, and that somebody had told him that, but he couldn't remember where he had picked that up,
Oh right.
and that he had imparted it to T. And but then he was saying in that tape that he was bringing it up because it was true.
Right, right. It was true that you get trapped into different belief systems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And like Doe said in the USA Today uh, information advertisement, um, uh, uh, we get what we believe, and this is part of this tape as well. That we manifest problems in our vehicles, even physical problems in our vehicles, uh, by believing in them, and then the chemistry is also a part of that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that if your vehicle is like in a cleansing mode, especially, I think it's
That all those
it could,
toxins are being dumped into your
yes,
system. I remember him saying that.
right. The toxins are being dumped into your system by burning the fat cells in any kind of fast, as I understand it,
Mm-hmm.
and that clouds the mind, but it also
Can bring on.
can bring stimulates whatever that person's package, their genetic package, uh, stimulates. So that, let's say, for the example of Bran Odie, one of the class members who joined the class, she was walking, it seems like normal. But then gradually, over time, she became, well, almost totally crippled. I mean, she had to use those canes that attach to your arms in order to walk because her legs were uh, so swollen. Her ankles and feet and legs and thighs were swollen. Uh, it was called osteoporosis, I believe, and and she did go to doctors. Um, Theodore took her to doctors, and she had medicine for a while. She had progesterone for a while, and anyway, but but then when Doe was talking about this, Bran Odie had conquered, uh, which you need to continue to conquer, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get scot free from the demons that we potentially have working on us. Anything that's presenting us with disease is a that's where they say that it's a demon. Um, that actually has us convinced that this is happening to us, and uh, that there's no way out because they know already. They're so confident in themselves sometimes. I'm not saying who this applies to, but in the case of Bran Odie, according to Doe, and you'll hear this in the tape for yourself, and I hope that you do listen to the tape because, uh, you know, uh, you'd have to listen to it 3 or 4 times. I still haven't, got it that well, and that's why I'm, being vague now, I guess. But that by not accepting, by being, by letting herself go, by Branody, like taking it out of her own hands, not having any confidence, and putting her confidence in her older members, putting your hands in the Lord's hands. That's the way it was said in the past. That was the whole thing. You give your all to your Lord, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength, and all. That's the objective. To give everything, and the more you stay on that space, that
Vibration.
vibration, yeah, that frequency, and try to stay on it, which is a daily thing, and it's a every day, every moment kind of thing. There's nothing assumed. It doesn't matter what you think you are, somebody is. They can talk about it till they're blue in the face, but if they're not actually uh, seeking to know the mind in regards to virtually everything in life, then to that degree they're not potentially growing. That they're doing that, and of course this is all in degrees, and the next level knows that we are saturated with the mind of the demons, the Luciferian, space alien, fallen angel souls is what I call them, just so that it's clear that all the different labels that I believe relate to them, and that T and Do are my source of that knowledge, but not the only source. I mean, I think they were from a previous time, but my vehicle's soul, if that soul is still hanging around this vehicle very closely, I don't know if it is or not, but had experiences to where they were with older members before, so they do know how to recognize older members. Though we can't trust our what did those say today in the tape about we can't have confidence that we have that connection, except, well, maybe that's not the way to say it. Well, we can get off track by thinking we have the connection and we don't. That's one way to put it, I think. And that's where it comes into this whole idea of people that think they are gods and think they are, well, this is going to get around to the other thing that I was going to talk about a little bit, is this idea of Antichrist. Where, just to read John's little mention of it in 1 John 2:18, says,
John the Baptist, is he the same one that was on Revelation? They're different Johns.
no, they're different Johns.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Right. I forgot the last name of the one that was John that wrote the Gospel of John, who
I was
was
going to say, that's a different John.
the same
too.
one in the Revelation. Same one that is said to be.
Did John the Baptist write any books in the Bible?
I don't know if I saw something in the Lost Books of the Bible from John the Baptist or from the Nag Hammadi library. I don't know if the Nag Hammadi library came before the
But John the Apostle,
Lost Books of the Bible, that book.
John the Apostle is the one that wrote not John, but Revelation.
That's my understanding. Yes,
Okay,
I believe Doe did acknowledge that.
And that's what you're just about to.
Right, and
Okay.
so that's the John I'm reading from now. 1 John, 2nd chapter, 18th verse, says, "Little children, it is the last time." That was funny when I heard him say "little children," because I know he was talking to adults in these letters. I don't think he was talking to little real children. So he thought of himself pretty highly, which was true. I think he had experience with an older member from the next level, and so he knew that older member. So he should have considered himself a child as well, by the way. Anyway, so just like like you have older brothers and sisters, and younger brothers and sisters, it's just like that, really. And Doe refers to members of the class in that, using those terms in this tape that we're talking about, tape 253. Anyway, so he says, "Little children, it is the last time. It is the last time. And as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now are there many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time." See, now, he was thinking it was the last time, meaning the same thing that Jesus referred to as the last time, but it is the last time after it's the beginning of the last time after Jesus left. I can say that, I think. But I think they were expecting his return to be faster. But but then Jesus described in great detail that I think John was present for. All the different things that he knew would happen. So I have to look at those words. I didn't actually examine those words in the Greek last time. What he might have been referring to there. But I know that I've seen people write and talk about how much of the Book of Revelations has already taken place. I think Jack Van Ippy, with the Trinity Broadcasting Network. I don't know if he's still talking, but he used to go through the whole Book of Revelations like a mile a minute and giving you examples of things that were in Roman history and Greek history and Latin, European, and wars and everything. He's bringing you right up to date. You know, and and so people that have that frame of mind, uh, they think it's already happened, and so they're not looking for. That's like the people that were in the Judaic religion expecting a Messiah because Moses said that the next one would come from from among them. In other words, from that's why they got the House of David, right? The House of David was is that right? House of David or Judah?
I don't know.
Judah, that's right. The House of Judah was the house, the tribe that Moses was saying, well, maybe not. Maybe Moses wasn't saying that because I don't have any other indications that it was the tribe of Judah, except Judah did break off from the other 11, and then Benjamin followed, the tribe of Benjamin, so that they were separated because maybe they had something to do with the Essenes also. I don't know, because I know the mainstream people that were the Israelite Jewish people, they were there was like a reformation that needed to happen according to some of the that's why Judah broke off, because of the things that they were putting into effect that and taking away. I'm not going to get into that. I could talk about it a little bit, but not do it proper justice. I just was studying that while I was writing my book. Anyway, so so when everybody says to you, is this person the Antichrist and this person? And Dope mentioned it the other day, right? In the tape 252. Didn't he talk about how they thought the spot on Gorbachev's head was the Antichrist?
Oh, that was tape
or the beast?
4 something.
411 or something like that?
No, it was 4 something.
You wanted to watch something, you wanted to listen to something in the 4s at the time.
Right.
And we talked about that in a previous stream a little bit.
And there was Revelation. You took notes on it.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to go and look for it now.
But that was a good, interesting one, though, because there was Revelation. He talked about Revelation.
Yes, right. And, yeah, if you go through the Beyond Human series, you'll see Doe talking about different things in Revelation. Not a lot, but, just because it's the same history. I mean, according to Doe, John didn't get everything right. He wasn't able, whatever, to record everything, exactly the way he got it, I guess, or close to the way he got it. But, I mean, I'm not saying he didn't get close, because there are a bunch of things that he did seem to get right, and T didn't treat it as T at first in 1974 said that all the events that happened that were depicted in the book of Revelations would transpire. So uh, um, but even if the 2,000 years that Lucifer was supposed to be locked up appears in the Revelation to be like in chapter 20. So it seems to be like after chapter 19, where the one that was Jesus uh, in his next level body comes back on a spacecraft in a cloud of light with his armada, with the other members of the crew, also having their not only their new vehicles, white linen vehicles. That's the way it's depicted, but uh, have their own spacecrafts, or they got tasks to do. They got different tasks, so they probably have different spacecrafts for different things. I mean, I know they do, but I don't know if they're all in one. All the ones that left, I don't know if they're working at. Who knows? There's no way of knowing what they're doing. I mean, in general, we know what they're doing. They're monitoring uh, all the instructions that they have to work with the people on the planet now, and the people that are asking, that are thirsting for the truth, that are suffering and wanting help, and are asking for the highest source. And that's the way the garden grows. It's the way we grow. Is we have adversity. If we just had a party all the time, then that'd be fine, but we wouldn't grow any. We wouldn't gain any strength of mind. In fact, we'd probably be diminishing our strength of mind by just doing whatever the vehicle wanted to do that floated the vehicle's boat. Mind is developed by taking control of the vehicle, no matter what that is and whatever you believe. It doesn't matter. It's the development. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but because it does matter. So I'm contradicting myself. I got corrected right away. I don't know where that correction came from, uh, um, but it's something that I want. I don't want to talk with so much confidence about things that I'm not properly confident about. Like I am confident about Tiendo, and I don't feel like I could be wrong. But I've wondered if I could be wrong about it all, and Tiendo actually even told us to go into your closet, go to someplace private during the time we were in the class and think about whether there's something you want in the world or somebody you want to be with or something you want to do. That was a way of like saying, this isn't for me, right? And I didn't have anything I wanted to do different or be with, So I didn't. And then about 10 minutes later or 20 minutes later, I don't know how long it was, they would say then go back to cutting that off, because the whole idea of the sword of the next level is to sever the roots of the human kingdom from those souls that are taking human vehicles into being instruments for their overcoming process to gain strength by operating, by commanding, by and Doe talked about this in this tape as well, 253, that if individuals were just following procedures because they thought it was right to follow procedures, whatever it is, whether it's keeping your hair short or wearing certain clothing or eating certain foods, and you didn't believe in those procedures, you didn't recognize what they were, who they were from, so that on your own you were deciding to follow those procedures. You weren't doing it in an artificial way. What you see is what the religious ends up being, even though the people that are saying the prayers, they may be genuinely seeking help from, but they're using so many words and it's a vain repetition, and the words become meaningless by that repetition, to where it becomes old hat, and then you become comfortable in that environment, thinking that you've got it made with God. You're going to be with God forever. And you got that in probably every religion, I believe, that same kind of distortion and dilution of the fact that uh, every member that's going to become a member of the next level, the kingdom of the real true kingdom of God, the one true kingdom of God, the kingdom in the heavens, in the literal heavens, what Tiendo at first only called primarily called the evolutionary level above human, to take it out of its spiritual context, because it's a less accurate terminology to use those other terms anymore, because of how they've been all disjointed and diluted and made nothing of. And so that's another example of how the same thing happens with the individuals that gravitate to the beliefs of the Eastern religions more, but as well as all the religions in the West as well. I mean, it's all the religions on Earth came about because of, my understanding is of this from Tiendo, is that because of the next level using this planet, building this planet, constructing this planet in a way that it would grow life forms that would go from the mineral kingdom to the plant kingdom to the animal kingdom and to the human kingdom, through evolutionary processes, but the strength of will of the mind. Of each of those, there's degrees of strength of mind to well, I guess every life form that has electromagnetic polarity is showing that it's got force. And whether it's a simpler force than, well, it is. It's a simpler force, I think, than the complex force that operates mammals through, and humans. I mean, humans as mammals, but to where they can become the instruments for membership in the next level by outgrowing them, basically, and conquering their addictions to being mammals even. So I'm going to go to the chat, see if there's anything going on. Nobody's in the chat. Nobody wants to talk.
It's weird.
Okay. Let's see if we're still streaming.
Yeah, you are.
And there's 4 individuals watching right now. Okay, that's fine. I don't. So, but I did want to go back to the Antichrist thing again, because if you actually look up the word, you'll see that there's people that have, studied this and documented these terms, and I believe the word used is like pseudo prophetess. It's got that word pseudo in the front of it, which actually does, in its root, mean something that's artificial, something that's, like T would say in the Black Hawk tapes, that the Lucifer and his angels are a copy. They're not real. They don't exist. They're just a facsimile of the real deal. The real deal is a member of the next level. That's the only real deals there are. Because the way I think about that is because we are temporary, very small lifespan when we talk about ourselves as our vehicles. And our minds can be very small, or I mean, they can have a lot of information, and but not have uh, that much experience with, well, conquering addictions, whatever, things that, that's just one example, right? But, so anyway, I don't know, need to get into that, but so a false prophet is another way that it's used. And, but it's not used, that the term Antichrist was never used by Jesus that we knew about. But John got it from somebody. So maybe Jesus did use that. The thing is, I have to go back to another Greek dictionary because my Greek dictionary, for some reason, isn't showing the Greek word that goes with Antichrist right here. So I can't talk to that. But I do know that pseudo has to do with its meaning. That's why it says anti. It's like anti. If you actually take the word apart, it's against anointing. Because the word Christ has to do with having a task from the next level, being a member of the next level. Anointed to that task. It's being anointed as a king, basically. Even though in the next level you're a beginner. And you don't think of yourself as a king. But humans, like Jesus said, that even the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than John the Baptist. And greater among men, John the Baptist was the greatest. Human, I think, is what he was saying. I think Kathy was reading today about some history of John the Baptist, and that he had some relationship with Jesus before he was baptized, right?
Mm.
And they might have been part of the same Essene community.
Yeah, Zoan.
The Zoans.
At Zoan, Egypt.
In Zoan, Egypt.
Yeah.
And there's, I don't doubt that's possible. There is that book, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, that I think, even though I think they got way off track, and there's people that believe in, there's people that believe that Jesus is living in Europe somewhere. And some people call him the Maitreya. They say is the same as Jesus in the Buddhist, in Tibetan Buddhist kind of belief system. And when I studied the Maitreya, because I was familiar with Benjamin Creme, and his teaching is that he was like the spokesman for this person that was from an Indian, Asian Indian descent, that was living in England at the time and was waiting to come forward. Anyway, so I don't know why I'm getting into all that, but I guess, well, maybe I lost where I was going. Time for a drink of water.
Well, you were talking about John the Baptist. So.
Right. And the Essenes. That Doe had us study the Essenes a little bit.
There's not much on them.
Yeah, we had the book that was called Essene Christian Faith, I think.
I have it.
Yeah. And that, gives you a bunch, but that also gives you, I think, a clue into Enoch. And so my understanding was that the Essenes were a sect of Judaism that kind of, well, as a sect does, they break off from the other sects. sects. And so, and that the Essenes, were considered to be more of a celibate group, uh, and were taking very seriously the idea of even self-castration, which Doe cringed when he thought about that.
Well,
That
I
they
thought
was
it was interesting that maybe Joseph was in a scene.
right, right. They were saying that his marriage with Mary was a virgin marriage, right? They were saying, but uh, but Tiendo felt like there was an egg in the vehicle that we're calling Mary that was a human egg, and that it was fertilized by the next level, like some kind of however they might do something like that. Um, in order to prepare that vehicle to receive information that was beyond the scope of any of the vehicles at that time could grasp, in order to present the graduation requirements of leaving everything behind to give one's all to the next level, the kingdom of God, the Father in heaven, the Heavenly Father, God, Jehovah, however, whatever terms you want to use, and in a different kind of experiment, but seems like potentially with the same direction. The Hindus were to like Judaism as Buddhism was towards Christianity. I think Doe made that kind of comparison as a generalization of a different experiment that the next level was doing. And the reason I say that I suspect that it led to uh, having the immigration of vehicles uh, to the United States, like through the whole 60s. I think it started before that, but maybe 50s and 60s movements. With the Hare Krishnas and the Tibetan Buddhists that began. That a lot of the New Age community, if you want to put up one term on them, the people that don't consider themselves Christians by a orthodox kind of way, um, uh, they're like a different strain of that experiment, like that part of the experiment. Well, I was thinking because Jesus talked about to his disciples that there was a fold that they don't know about that he was going to go to after he left there. In other words, fold meaning a sheepfold because he was the shepherd. He was talking about it in the same terms at that time and in that context. So perhaps, Doe went over to, maybe was, working through some other countries, maybe some of the, India perhaps, and maybe China, who knows, you know. Um, but that area, in order to oversee whatever growth was taking place there, and there's stories, that during the time before Jesus went public, uh, when he was 30 years old, that he had traveled to India, and I've seen different stories about that, and what the evidence for that was, and I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it at all. It would be like a member of the next level that was awakening to probably have experiences in a number of places with a number of different ways of thinking. I guess. I don't know. That's the only way I'm thinking about it right now. I could be wrong about that. But I just know that the next level do a lot of things. They don't. This task is it's a major task. developing souls that, on their own desire, their own volition, constantly, can actually become graduates into the next level.
Well, this book that the one guy that I spoke with out in the desert in Arizona, um,
Oh, yeah.
now I'm not endorsing that book or anything, and it's probably really hard to get a hold of. I don't know how many copies are in existence. I got that from Amazon, I think. Just an example of stories of Jesus being in other places before he came public and at 30.
Okay, I'm trying to get it in there. Just so people know what we're talking about when Kathy's talking about it. Do you want to? Yeah, right.
Just that there's, books written about him coming to America, South America, United States. And Joseph Coates is here.
Okay.
That was interesting.
Yeah, thanks for that. Oh, yeah, where did I pop that out there? Pop up, there it is. Joseph Coates, greetings. Is there anything you can say about Sexaholics Anonymous? Well, we started that 1987 or 8.
Mark and Sarah were gone, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Because we haven't gotten to that yet in the tapes.
I think they had left by then. I might be wrong about that. I don't know. I think so. And let's see. Well, have you read?
There's quite a few tapes that they talk about it.
Have you read the document? I think I posted something on my blog.
What on earth is that? Okay, there's his hand.
Yeah, if you go to my blog, sawyerhg.wordpress.com, I don't remember if I posted a document that I believe Rick Odie had that he put on his CDs and he sent to me that there's a number of documents. But one of them, I think, was like the beliefs of the Sexaholics Anonymous group. And the way that came about was T and Do both had some approval for the 12-step programs. And they, I don't know how they first heard about it, but they, after T left, I think, was when we lived in California and places, and we found out that there were these groups that were forming, and one of them was called Sexaholics Anonymous, right? And another one was called Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. I remember those two. And that T&O sent, I think, Alex Odie and I don't know who his partner was, but I think he probably had a partner, to a meeting. I think when we lived in Phoenix, he sent it.
Pam Odie was involved.
Oh, yeah?
I could be really wrong about that, but there are several tapes, like in the 260s or something. We're about to get into that. If you look at the tape logs, I think that may be the name of if you put in Sexaholics Anonymous, it'll...
Yeah, I would look through the...
Because there's quite a bit of discussion on it.
Well, I can look for it right now.
A lot.
I'll do a quick look right now. Oh, see, what I'm thinking about wasn't Sexaholics Anonymous. It was what the group formed, which was Anonymous Sexaholic Celibate Church. And and there's a document that's an introduction and ways, and I believe, and there's another document that's the statement of beliefs. And we ended up sending little pamphlets with the statements of belief, I think, to those in our family. A number, I'm not sure everyone got one, but my mother did, I think.
Oh yeah, so maybe it's in that.
Yeah, she showed it to me when I went back to live in that house for a little while. But yeah, there was a flyer that we made.
Yeah, you got
But anyway, so Alex Odie ended up going to the meeting and uh, getting up and speaking, as probably everybody that goes to the meeting does. You know, they technically usually get up and introduce themselves and say a little something about why they're there. And Alex Odie, I don't know what he said exactly, but uh, they felt like um, they were being put upon, at least that, like, you know, they were like acting like big shots because they conquered their sexuality, even though they didn't necessarily conquer it completely. Uh, but so that was one thing that came out of that. But it told Doe that that wasn't that was one of the steps towards considering going public again, and how and in what language to speak. You know, whether you were going to speak to the people that were in the UFO communities, you know, strictly non-religious talk, or you were going to go to the Christians, or, you know, different New Age groups. You know, Doe was examining all those things in 1987, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1990, 1991, 92,
all right, all right.
93, 94. Every year he did. I mean, he did a major effort every time for each of those attempts to find the audience, find the individuals that had that souls were returning to try to take over. Uh, that, you know, the next level is planting in the human kingdom. Whenever they see a soul that's seeking to grow, um, if it's, you know, if they feel like that vehicle's got the capacity, has got the things that need to be overcome by that soul, then they have that soul take that vehicle over, try to take that vehicle over. It's an effort. It's not something that just happens. Uh, um, but it is like training a horse. That's why they use the word horse sometimes to talk about human vehicles in the scriptures, in the Revelation. Anyway, so maybe that's all I need to say about that at this point. And if for some reason I don't find those documents on my WordPress page, I'll put them up there, because, you know, there's nothing about them. They're not part of the Heaven's Gate book. So let's see what else. Oh yeah, I wanted to say a little bit more about this Antichrist, the false prophet thing, because Jesus talked in terms of saying that there would be false prophets, and he also said there would be people that would be masquerading in his name. There would be people coming in his name saying that they were Christian, actually saying that they were Christ. Well, that's where the word comes from. All right, and so you not only have like probably hundreds. I mean, there's probably over 100 that are documented. If you go to Wikipedia and you search on people that claim to be Jesus return,
Now I'm gonna have to do that.
yeah, you'll see probably about 100 because that's what I remember seeing. But or maybe I'm getting that confused with contactees and a lot of the contact. Well, I shouldn't say a lot.
Way more contactees than 100.
Yeah, there probably are, and some of those contactees, you know, indicate that they are Jesus at some point, and sometimes they change it. I think David Icke might have said that at one point, and I think Rael definitely did say that, and then he changed it and he just stuck to Maitreya after that. Sometime after that, in his book, you can see that reflected. But but you can think that one of the definitions that is given to this in this Greek dictionary was one who, acting the part of a divinely inspired prophet, and I added the word speaker, because that's what a prophet is, somebody that's actually with their mouth, they're speaking something, utters, and they even said it's somebody that's inspired, a divinely inspired speaker utters to their speaking falsehoods under the name of divine prophecies. Right? So, and the big thing about that is that when somebody's doing that, they don't know it. I don't think for the most part they think that. They know it. And it was funny that the other day, as I do when I come back from work, I sometimes I do live streams, but sometimes I listen to the radio. And I was listening to Art Bell, actually before that even, and he had a separate line that he opened up, and this was like during the Clinton years because he talked about Clinton a little bit, and he called it the Antichrist line, and he had people calling in. I forgot to tell you about this, Kathy. And so so there was I listened to maybe 6 people that said they were the Antichrist.
And he never let you call into the show?
Well, no, I never tried to call into Art Bell show because
You never did?
no, I wasn't doing anything when he was. I didn't even know he was doing anything anymore. I don't know why I didn't seek to call into his show.
Well, I guess
I did seek to call into the Coast to Coast show a number of times, but I don't know. They didn't even return my request. Well, we know that when the group left, it's not a secret that Coast to Coast was really taken back because of they had been talking about the comet and what kind of object it was and stuff, and so when it was linked to the departure of the class, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. They didn't want to seem like they were promoting that by even having it talked about. And so I knew that I might have tried to get in touch with them early on in the early 2000s, but what the people said that were claiming to be an antichrist, it was interesting actually, because they were very matter of fact about it. But then they didn't claim to know a lot of stuff, and they felt like they were just given that information that that's what they were, that they were picking up on it, and so Art Bell was treating it as if, okay, what's your evidence? What for saying this, and then he would ask him questions like, do you live in hell and stuff like that, and none of them said that they were living in hell or anything, but and they didn't claim to be Satan necessarily. It was kind of weird actually, and but but then I've listened to other people talk about that they have become Christ. They have Christ consciousness, and and
That's the second coming.
yeah, that's the second coming, right? That's another way of thinking, and basically they're ignoring, like the way that many Christians ignore this little thing about there's many antichrists already. In other words, false speakers. You know, uh, back when John was writing letters. Anyway, but about Jesus, it just shows you that there's still people that are clinging to these terms, and of course, it's popular to talk about it, especially now, especially with the beginning of death metal and everything. It's like this is like a normal way of thinking. We're all Satans, and we're death and destruction, and we got a low voice and right. Basically, making it into a cult, a subculture. Their own little country club account. Their own little belief system, mocking it. And they're actually mocking the fact. The mockery that they do to me is kind of like laughing at it, right? And it's actually, but it distracts from the reality behind it, I think. But then again, it's just for fun. People like different kinds of music, so I'm not saying that anybody's harmed by it. I wouldn't I wouldn't censor it. You know, I mean the way that well, the ones in power for, during the COVID and everything, and after that, were trying to do with facts, with real information. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that, but what I'm trying to do though is say that, um, like Doe said about Christians, that they were the biggest group of individuals that were prepared for the return, but they were so saturated with misinformation from Lucifer and his angels that that distorted and diluted and gave them all kinds of distractions to the core truth, that they ceased believing in the core truth, and saw it only in a figurative way or something, or a theoretical way, or like the way that Catholics teach celibacy. But then they're having sex with people anyway. Sometimes, a lot of times, probably. But anyway, that is for them only. That's what they teach. When the teachings from Jesus was that celibacy could be for everybody that is a believer. And actually it's a prerequisite to gaining the strength of mind of graduating. It's one of the things among the list of major offenses and lesser offenses, and it's that's a major
You are going to finish
effort.
this yogurt and banana.
Okay, that sounds good to me. I'm getting kind of hungry.
I can imagine.
So let me see. I'm going to go through the notes a little bit more and then bring it to a close. I already talked about Branody, right? I mean, there's more to say about it.
Overcome all the.
Yeah, so what Doe talked about Branody, using her as an example, and if you didn't hear the beginning of the broadcast, you might not know where I'm coming from, but in short, Branody had a human vehicle that uh, became crippled with osteoporosis while she was in the classroom, and she also uh, um, was recovering from the worst part of that a lot. So, and she ended up graduating with the class members. So, he was using Branody as an example because Branody would have been sent to tape because Branody was living in a different location at the time. But that's a long story. But Branody apparently came from a genetic background that she was very strong-minded, and that her beliefs were very strong on a lot of things, and that so that she had so much rigidity when it came to the classroom, having to wait, I can't read this right now. Let me put it over here.
About her kids saying that, her stuff had to be in a specific place.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Yeah, but right, her, right, that her kids told Liv Odie and Dan Sodi, was it, or
I think so, yeah.
when they first went to Bran Odie's place where she lived, I don't know how old her kids were, but they told her that you don't know I think the bad side of Bran Odie. That's the way the kids were talking. Anyway, and that, well, I'm not talking bad about Bran Odie, not in any score. It's a characteristic of the lower forces that's embedded in this kingdom, and that needs to be overcome to become a member of the next level, among a lot of things. Anyway, so like she had to have a certain kind of toothpaste because she said that she would break out with a rash on her tongue if she didn't have that. And so, if you're that settled on things, and that might be the case. I mean, she might have experimented with different toothpastes, but and had different responses to justify that thinking. But that was just one example of the many things that would be happening when T and Doe started bringing in supplies. Because after 1976, we weren't buying our own things anymore. So, and it just so happens that not long after they formed the supply tent, and T and O were the only ones that were going out and buying things. I know we were still camping because we were in Kansas, and I don't know what it was, but it was just like a field. I think that they just rented, leased from some farmer or something, and we put all our tents up, and we had 20 something tents probably, and because we were like about 70 individuals at that point, and there were two to a tent, so that was a lot of tents, two or three sometimes. But and Branody would come to the supply tent Well, actually, we were delivering supplies to each tent, and sometimes I would do that, the task of delivering a certain allotment of rice and beans, or pasta, or if there was whatever the products were that T&O, we never went without unless you were stuck on having certain things, and that's the same problem that some people had with the food choices they were making for us. And they wanted to know whether we had allergies or anything, but they went with their instructions on things, and I don't know if anybody broke out on anything. But anyway, the bottom line was, if you weren't willing to change, change was the name of the game. So you had to be flexible. Flexibility is a member of the next level is flexible. They're not hard nosed about um, things that I don't think hard nosed would be a way to describe them at all. So I'm going to take that back. But they're not stubborn. And one example was like in the classroom where you had partners and you were going into the lab, neutral lab, to make food and stuff, and you had to do things on time. You had to, you wanted to have a good product, so you follow the recipe card that was called the formula. Uh, at times, you would get into little disagreements with your partner, and you could have the whole crew in disagreement. And meanwhile, the experiment is going to pot. Not literally to pot, but is going downhill because you're not doing things, you're not working together. So it was better to get the task done than to be stubborn about what you believed the procedure was in this case or that case. And Doe talks about this in this tape. And so, well, actually, I should be looking at this other thing instead. Sorry. So, in other words, it was very accelerated for each person. Uh, and they would talk about it in those terms that if you're giving your mind to your older member, then they didn't want anybody that was to stay there if they didn't recognize the value of doing that. Now, you're not necessarily going to recognize the value of doing it right away, and it depends on what your genetic structure and your life in the world has yielded you in your beliefs. So that if you believe that a certain food is going to make you throw up to eat it, then you don't felt like you will manifest that happening. And if that happened to be that strong of a characteristic, like I had a little bit of that characteristic regarding okra. Okra that wasn't cooked like deep fried, so that you could kind of mask the gooiness of it, the sliminess of it. That sliminess made me gag, and but it didn't really make me gag when I got control of my mind over it. I could consume it without gagging, and then I could consume it, and it was okay. I didn't really want it, but I did it because it was the discipline of the vehicle. And I learned from that discipline that my mind can override my vehicle. And people do this all the time, actually. Like Doe gave us the example of when he would go to cocktail parties, because he was mingling with the rich and famous in Houston. And they would have shrimp cocktail. And everybody would always be raving about the shrimp cocktail, and he had never tried it. And then he decided, everybody was raving about it, so he figured, I better try it, and he got sick to his stomach, and he went into the bathroom and got rid of it right away, but then he learn to consume it because he wanted to fit in. So I mean, that kind of thing. I think maybe we all can think about a circumstance to where we were that way. But that's not like saying that if we had if Tiendo bought us something. Well, Tiendo knew what we were eating before that because people would talk about it, and the helpers that would meet with them every day, they would add their input on what they were eating, because they were giving us money to go to the store, to go to the grocery store and buy what we do. So we would travel like four to a car, and that was when we were close to in the 90s, 90 in the amount of us, the members of the group, and so. Uh, but then when they started buying the food for us, then we were being put to the test. And so I remember Bran Odie walking through the camp on crutches. I don't know if I said that before. That's when I first remember that happening. And then that ended up, well, the reason for that, what Doe was talking about in this tape, was because she thought she knew better about things, and she was listening to the negatives that they don't know. Like some examples were. Let's see, what did he say? Some of the ways that her vehicle, that Bran already told Doe, her vehicle would tell her in her head, was that she would see things in a certain way. She would be afraid to say it, as she would be the oddball, and she knows she is right, so doesn't tell anyone, as they wouldn't understand anyway. That's the kind of attitude that she had in the early classroom. Okay, so and so Doe was saying to learn the power of belief, and so strongly it doesn't stand a chance of not materializing. And so, what does that mean right now? What Doe said in the USA Today is that everybody's going to get what they believe, and that belief was going to take some to what they think is their heaven, and that heaven is not going to be automatically the next level, highest heaven. It's going to be something in the elevated areas above the earth that is a facsimile. It's a phony. It's an anti-Christ. It's an anti-truth. It's an well, I was going to say anti-cult of cults. Uh, and so, which we don't know what the next level is going to do with any of the spirits. We can't judge anybody because we don't know what they're up against. We don't know when they could change. We don't know how fast they could change, and we don't know what goes on in their minds when they're not doing the jobs that to us look like presidents and things like that, right? And so that's Jesus taught not to judge each other because we don't know how to judge. It's in terms of what the next level is going to say for future opportunities to grow. So, talking like doomsday-ish really doesn't do any value to anybody, I don't think, except to the degree that Doe did, so that the record would be set straight, that there was going to be a recycling, and that was going to include the recycling of the Lucifer and his angels. And then there'll be a replacement of those souls. They'll be pretty much teaching the same thing. I guess enough to where the next level can use that as like a fertilizer so that souls can grow by dealing with. Not that souls can't grow from other ways as well, but this is an accelerated growth. Doe said that Branody had made tremendous strides, very accelerated. Her face is healthier, she was walking better, not needing the cart. When I remember visiting with her as a task, she was in the cart almost all the time. When she gets caught thinking, when Branody gets caught thinking about her problems, she goes into recession. And when her mind is on her tasks, she is going through recovery. Her tasks meaning taking over the vehicle. Not letting negative thoughts in. For instance, like it's like so the reason for this in a more concise sentence is that, like Doe expressed in the tape, something about, he said, when genes had developed to that degree, and then you tell them they have to drop all their desires, when she had a belief on everything and they worked for her, but then was like the difference of day and night. And she became a target of Lucifer and his angels to do a number of things. They wanted to disrupt the class. Like Doe talked about this. I remember when I heard him talking in person with a handful of other students present, not a meeting, about Branody was, and this is when we were living in California, I believe, or we might have been in Arizona for part of that time. I'm not sure exactly. But I remember Doe saying that he was really concerned that she wants to leave, that she was ready to leave her vehicle. And he didn't want her to leave her vehicle. That would, because he knew, he knew that it could be turned around. And he was puzzled by it also. And him and T both went through a lot trying to take care of Branody, but also, physically, but primarily to take care of her mind so that she could conquer that ailment. Those healings that Jesus supposedly did, well, Doe didn't think that. He thought some of those were exaggerated. I think he even thought like a high number, like 90%, were exaggerated. So I don't know which ones were exaggerated, but I think there were healings that were done by Jesus, and he talked about it in detail, to some degree. Like one individual, he said, couldn't be healed. It would need both prayer and fasting. In other words, he had to ask the next level, his Heavenly Father, his older member. He wanted to ask for that. He would want to be the instrument of that healing, that maybe his older member did that on the spacecraft to the healing of that person. Or maybe more likely the case, um, Jesus knew that it was a demon, an evil spirit that was inhabiting that person for part of their ailment. But in that case, where Jesus said that you need to have prayer and fasting, so you need to look to the next level for help and try to put into effect what you feel like you get, and because that's part of it. It's not just asking for help and then all of a sudden, forget about them other times. That does that is a tendency of the vehicle to do that. Um, when everything's going okay, then you're not really asking anymore. I'm not saying who's like that, but I think I'm like that. And but I go through periods where I am asking, so thankful for that. But okay, I'll probably be just a few more minutes.
Yeah, don't worry about
Okay. So so like Doe talked about how at this certain craft that was called the Mariner's Craft. I think it was in California on the coast, Southern California. That Branody was vibrating death. She was like killing herself because she didn't want to live. I mean, she didn't do that then, but uh, she had resigned herself to leaving the vehicle. And I learned also at that time that Coyote was contemplating leaving the vehicle because he was so depressed about, well, he had some difficult lessons as well. Okay, and the lower forces were thriving, trying to thrive on attacking uh, a number of the members from what was called the Southcraft at the time. I remember this, and but wasn't limited to Southcraft because there were individuals that were in Northcraft that ended up at that time leaving all around the same time, general time period of the late 1980s, and but also into the early 90s too. Yeah, with including myself, and so she had in her brain, in her mind, no one understood her, and that she didn't feel like she could have what she needed. And what's expected of me, I can't do. So she wanted to escape from the vehicle. She believed in Tea and Doe, but she was overcome with the influences in her mind and the way that was manifesting in her body. Now, I understand, I could be wrong, but I believe that her vehicle had polio at an early age. And I understand recovered from it. I'm not sure how, when, why, and all that. But so it makes me think that she knew, that her soul knew that she was going to pick a vehicle that was going to have this self-dependency and confidence in self to deal with, to overcome. Because the best the way that members of the next level are, they have no self-confidence. If you ask them to do a task, you said, choose between this, well, I'm going to put it very simple. We didn't have this example exactly, but let's say you had to choose between um, getting gas at one gas station as opposed to getting gas at another gas station. And let's say somebody that you're working with, your partner, uh, feels strongly that that other brand is a bad brand, so you don't want to get that one. Okay, that wouldn't be a next level way of dealing with it. The next level way would be thinking, what would our older members do on the spot? What would they choose? And and that ends up sending a signal to the older member's mind, or the helpers that the older member assigned to receive the signals and have certain procedures on how to deal with, however that might be working, and to give you an answer. And so the other person may say, no, I don't think. They may have another idea, right? And they may be trying to search the database of procedures on how to choose what kind of gas to get. Which I don't know if we had any procedures on the brand of gas to get. I think we generally stayed with the mainstream ones, though. The ones that were the biggest ones. Thinking that, they go through gas faster. I don't know what the thinking is, actually, so I shouldn't say that. But I can think for myself that, if they're putting out more gas, then they probably have a better quality. They might not have water in their tank from condensation and things like that a station that's not doing so much might have. But, and get into the sludge and stuff. But anyway, so the way that a member of the next level would treat it would be that neither one would go by their past experience unless they had to. Unless they had to make a decision. And if they had to make a decision and they couldn't pull in something from their older member's mind to do differently from even those two options, like they may get a thought, well, go to a different station altogether. And so they would, if they were both pulling from their older member for that, when one person might say it, the other person would think, oh, I recognize that. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's do that. But if they stick to their guns and they want to insist that, everybody knows that you don't go to that station for gas. I'm just using that as an example. And they won't budge from that. Well, they may be right in that circumstance, but they didn't approach it the way a member of the next level would do it, and so therefore they were getting a failing mark on that test at that moment. Doesn't mean they can't change, but if they have a tendency to trust their own mind on that, they probably also have a tendency to trust their own mind on a lot of things. Now, in the human kingdom, of course, if you don't trust your own mind, you're seen as weak, and you're seen as, and people are going to take advantage of you, and that probably happens a lot, but the classroom wasn't about doing things to get along in the human kingdom. Jesus even talked about getting along in the human kingdom, that if you find disagreement with somebody, someone with a position of authority, then try to come to an agreement with them. Otherwise, you might find yourself in before the judge and in jail, and you'll pay. You might have to pay a lot for the, for that not seeking agreement. At least that's the way I think about that parable that Jesus talked about. Um, but it's another one of the things. Every time I do these streams, I talk about something from Jesus that is that you see evidenced completely in the audio tapes. I mean, you can see it other places too, but the most in-depth place that you see how they were exactly the same teachings relative to the current day. Because they were demonstrating, T and Do were demonstrating that same thing. They didn't trust their own minds. And Do had to learn to trust T's mind. And they were working as a partnership. So they would use each other to see if they got the right information before they would bring it to the class to talk about it. And because they knew that the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls could trick them. They knew they weren't beyond being tricked into saying something or doing something that was not from their older member's mind. But they also had to be willing to take a chance on a positive sometimes. And they knew that if they couldn't reverse their decision, it was like they had a little expression that was, if in doubt, don't. See, I'm not just talking about like a belief system, where they have words on a page and this is what I believe. If in doubt, don't. I'm not talking about that. We didn't have that written down anywhere that I remember. But that's what happens in a religion. They make that into a saying that people then make into a practice. And then what are you going to say? If in doubt, don't. If you're in doubt about the existence of your older member, or you say, well, then don't, don't believe in having an older member anymore. Don't believe that somebody actually created this planet and the life forms on it. People, I mean, very intelligent people, very knowledgeable people, very wise people, very caring people, very compassionate people. Their passion being working for their older members, doing all kinds of things to help individuals in the human kingdom. Tiendo said right in the beginning, if you really want to help, if you want to be a humanitarian, you want to help humans, you need to be in the next level. I mean, they didn't say it that way. They just said that the next level is the place where you can really help humans. And that can be in all kinds of ways that we see things happen all the time that people recognize as, well, wow, that's a miracle. I survived that plane crash. Or this or that. You don't know what the next level is doing to help people survive certain things. We don't know that because they can be invisible among us and still be physical. Even dense physical. But they can change their vibration so that we can't see them unless they have instruction for some reason to be seen, which sometimes that, no doubt, happens. I believe Tiendo did indicate that, even though they didn't know those tasks. Sometimes they suspected them, like when they heard the story about that somebody met these two people that were dressed in, this was like in the 1970s maybe. I'm not sure what year it was actually, but they were wearing clothing that was popular in the early 1900s. That you wouldn't see anybody wearing nowadays much. They were dressed very well, and in those kind of old clothing, And he said, well, if they were doing a next level task, then whoever was working on the wardrobe did a bad job because it would have been the task to try to blend in, not stand out for that kind of a task. So the last thing I'm going to talk about before I close the stream is what Doe talked about regarding Gold Beach, which is the picture that I've got on my thumbnail. A picture of Gold Beach that Kathy found for us to use. And there's a bunch of history with Gold Beach, and I suggest for learning the history, you go to the 88 update and read what Doe talked about Gold Beach there. And let me think if there's another place or not. Well, yeah, watch the Beyond Human tapes, of course, because Doe talks about Gold Beach there. Where, but in a quick synopsis, it was the kind of like the second or third um, bringing in of a great deal, a significant amount of Next Level Mind. And Gold Beach is where they were trying to figure out if they were supposed to fulfill some certain prophecies, what prophecies they were here to fulfill. See, that the first piece of information they both got was that they were here to fulfill prophecies. That was some months before Gold Beach. And that bring updates to the Bible, which they didn't know exactly what those were necessarily either, entirely. But they were having ideas about it. So they were going to places and where they could study, bookstores, or they probably went to libraries, to find out if they could learn, from the philosophical materials and the theological materials and all what prophecies there were and whether they would fit into any. And so they got to the point where they saw the Revelation 11, two witnesses, and they recognized that was talking about them, even though they didn't like the idea of having to tell anybody that. And I'm not going to go into why, but I think some of it you'll see in the Beyond Human tapes, and they're not for sale, so I'm not leaving a teaser. I just don't want to be, there's so much to talk about. One thing leads to the next, and it's good for people to have their own thirst to seek out the answers. A lot of what I'm talking about can be read and heard. Most of it, I hope. I'm not trying to inject my own mind in here that much. I automatically do it. I don't know if there's any way around that. But I can be careful about every word I use so that I don't do it. Anyway, and so Doe says, talking about that time in Gold Beach in 1973, he says, when your chemistry begins to get out of control because the pressure has built and built and built, that door of losing control completely is very inviting. And so somebody can apply that. Uh, um, uh, Anybody that's had any kind of strong habit or an addiction to substances, I think can recognize that um, um, there's all kinds of like triggers, even chemical triggers. I'm talking about. There's mental triggers too, I think, but there's chemistry that wants that experience, and so the vehicle is kind of aching for it, right? And so that can build over time, and to where the person uh, just goes and does it, whatever it is, right? And from a next level perspective, that's letting your vehicle have control of you. And that's one of the things we all can work on. And how, when, where, and to what degree we work on that is up to us. And we become more aware of those things to work on, the more we become aware of what there is to work on. And I think the best way to look at that is to read the Heaven's Gate book and look at the major offenses and the lesser offenses and the 17 steps as the biggest clues, so that we're not working on something that the next level doesn't feel is worth working on. We can make up things that we think we're working on, and maybe they would have some application. But the things in those lists would be when I first brought that up to Kathy about working on all that, I think she responded the same way I did, in a sense, that wow, how can anybody do all that? Getting rid of jealousy and all the things that there are to work on. I'm just bringing up or being attached to certain possessions or an ego, thinking you're right about this and that, and there's so much. The human kingdom is filled because we've been filled with the misinformation mind. And then you can see in the teachings that came from Moses, there was attempts to civilize humans more so that they could grow to have to do, like, when it says don't kill anybody, don't steal from anybody, don't covet your neighbor's wife or your neighbor's goods, want what they have. They were trying to help us install a program, because we know how intoxicating it is, right? To see somebody with something and we look at it and we think, wow, I'd like to have that model of cell phone, or I'd like to have that computer or that car or that lifestyle. And there's nothing wrong with having nice things, by the way. Tiendo said that the Lord wants you to have nice things, but doesn't want you to want them. See, that's the kind of thing that only Tiendo could say, even though they might have read it somewhere. I'm not saying that they were the first ones to say it, but they were made it part of their vocabulary because they knew that it worked. It was accurate. Because humans can pick up on things. Humans do pick up on things. Because when their mind is in this atmosphere, their mind is in this atmosphere. It's available, but it's not easy to tap into because it doesn't push you over like the Luciferian way that they beam down thoughts to keep humans addicted and saturated with anything but next level thinking. True next level thinking, not the idea of next level thinking, which the religions are kind of founded on. Not that they don't have some things that they do that are from the next level, uh, it's next level's judgment and it's a case by case basis. But you know, you know, hello. Right, I'm going to move on to the next paragraph. I'm almost at the bottom of this. Okay. So Doe wasn't saying that uh, your your conscious mind identifies um, recognizing when the chemistry is beginning to get out of control and starting to build pressure. Because it could be happening. He was using Allodi and Pamodi as examples because they both had uh, migraine headaches at times. And um, in other words, it could identify itself. I mean that direction of the chemistry getting out of control and developing into a headache, for instance, uh, um, can develop in a way that you don't even recognize. But if you are honest with yourself and look back on it, you'd probably be able to remember a moment when you could have got out of the situation or let it continue to build until the period of exercise and control has began to pass. In other words, you didn't have control anymore. And then Doe was saying that this is not to say that the chemistry was not happening that was causing severe problems in the vehicle. But the chemistry was happening to a large degree, even though it was stimulated somewhat by the cleansing element of the sweets and fruit and the fasting period with the juice and all, which was he was referring to um, what Branody had been through. But I think initially he was talking. This is talking still about the Gold Beach time, where he and T were living off of blackberries and that they could pick off the trees, which I can verify grow all wild all over the place on the coast of Oregon. Um, and are very good. I don't think anybody sprays them, but I never can. You never know, right? Yeah, they were living off of that making money by selling crosses or picking up money off the surf, and then using that to buy a little bit of cream, and they would have with the blackberries. So that's like a fast. It's like a juice fruit fast. And so basically your vehicle is cleansing during that time. So it makes it so that when you have uh, other chemical problems that are created in large part by your mind, or to some degree by your mind, not learning how to combat them, um, then you've got uh, a bigger battle. You got because your the cleansing process also puts toxins into your system, like I was talking about before, by burning fat instead of burning because it doesn't have the carbohydrates and the proteins and the fats from many diets. And when it doesn't have those, it's going to burn. It's going to look for energy by burning the fat cells, and that throws toxins into your system and makes you feel kind of terrible, kind of bad, sluggish, tired. I've gone through it a number of times because we did a bunch of different fasting. So, so the vulnerability, Doe was saying, of the vehicle to the chemistry was primarily the psychological condition that had been permitted to encompass the vehicle. The vulnerability of the vehicle to the chemistry was primarily the psychological condition that had been permitted to encompass the vehicle. Now, Doe gave an example, uh, um, but let me finish this first. The next thing he talked about uh, on this score was the only reason Doe was telling students this was uh, in an effort to help not only Alodi Pamodi deal with headaches, but because he was watching this booger, a Luciferian soul, mind, influence, all different terms for what we call the booger, a space alien, fallen angel, right? It's another way of describing them. Uh, and how that booger would go from person to person. This isn't the only tape where he's talked about that. And watching it go from one person to another. Um, so, so last time here, I don't need to get into that part. So I'm just gonna. Well, he was just saying that that individuals that were going through these difficult uh, um, conditions and battles, and which is the war of Armageddon. It's a battle for souls. Who we give our loyalty to? The creators of this planet and the life forms on it, or not? That's what the battle is. And it's a task. It's a difficult task. It's not that clear to understand unless we start to seek that clarity by, literally asking T and Do for help and reading and studying all their material and putting into effect everything we want to put into effect as fast as we can. It's there's plenty of challenges. I tell you, you know with the way the world is and everything, we're in the pressure cooker. The next level's got us in a pressure cooker. I mean, we want to be here, and if we need our vehicles in order to gain strength from, and the next level will decide where the souls go after the vehicles expire. Anyway, uh, so but individuals that are show the signs of being a primary target. He was talking about like Branody and Alodi, and uh, um, because Alodi was One time, Alodi, I witnessed this firsthand. I was standing right next to Alodi in a room, and there was another person in the room or two close to him, and he started speaking gibberish. Almost like I don't know how to mimic it, but it was worse than. It didn't sound as cohesive as people that speak in tongues, and I don't think that's cohesive at all. But it sounded like that in a sense, just like making things up. But he didn't know it. He didn't know he was doing it. He was in. I think they said it was a diabetic coma that he went into briefly because he went to the doctor after that. It didn't last that long, but I don't know exactly how long it lasted because we got the attention of T and Doe right away. I think T was still in her vehicle at the time. We got on the phone, or the medical people did, because there were certain people that were assigned to, dispense medicine and handle the notes that people would write about having this pain or this rash or whatever it was that we had experienced. Which the way that we were instructed to do it was also not easy to accept for some people. Like we wouldn't say we could have been taking aspirin for 20 years before joining the classroom, and now it wasn't right to ask for aspirin. It was right to state your need. In other words, my head hurts, and then let T and O's guidance through their older members and with the procedures that they give to the students give you what you needed. And nobody did without. I don't know that anybody was in, like toothache pain. I had a lot of toothache pain. And so I always had pain relievers for it. And, I went to the doctor once for an examination that, I don't know, I don't need to get into it. But I mean, but Doe did develop the Transfiguration diet, which is which he felt was because there's no side effects. That if you use that diet, you can reverse disease. But it depends. It might depend. It's going to depend on how far that disease progressed in the vehicle. Whether the Transfiguration diet could reverse it. But I've used it to reverse Lyme's disease. So anyway, after the classroom and during the classroom as well, I had vertigo. I used it to reverse vertigo. Actually, the cayenne pepper, therapeutic use. Lots of water, 15 minutes before food. You take the formula was 6 to 8 ounces of water, the way I remember it, with a quarter teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and you drink that down, and you and then you chase it with another 6 to 8 ounces of water, and then what we also did with that was we did a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, the kind that still has the sediment in it, the mother they call it, and we had a tablespoon of that, and then a little water to kind of flush that down a little bit because that's kind of harsh to drink as well, and I got used to doing it. I mean, it was never that hard for me to do it, so I didn't have a vehicle that had that difficulty, that challenge. I had a vehicle that had other challenges. Anyway, but we did that 3 times a day. We worked up to it 3 times a day. And then we worked up that quarter teaspoon to a full teaspoon. I did that for 3 years. And I think it might not have been good to do that much for that long. But I don't seem to have any permanent problem from having done it. But I'm not doing that kind of intensity because I did have a reoccurrence of swelling in my knee and then the ankle. That was making it hard to bend. So I started taking the cayenne pepper, a quarter teaspoon, 1 time a day in the morning with all the water that I talked about. And I didn't have any adverse responses from that quarter teaspoon. But I kind of used a lot of cayenne anyway. So if you're not accustomed to the hotness and all, your stomach or you got to do things differently. Like Kathy puts it in her drink when she feels to. And we did that also with the Burroughs cleanser. So I know that's a good thing to do. So just to round on this idea of being a prime target by the lower forces, that if Lucifer even sees anyone growing into a potentially very good member of the class, they become a prime target. So, and the next level uh, set it up that way because they knew the Luciferians were going to do that. And so they let them do it. And they know how much we can handle. And they know, and we can ask them if if it's too hard and we feel like, we want to off ourselves or something. I'm not saying I go through that every time. A lot of people go through that. I think it's like, it's being used as an escape as well. As what the next level used for as moving on to their next task after they've completed a significant part of their overcoming. But for those that know that we have lots to learn and lots to do, which I think is probably everybody on this planet, we need these vehicles in order to have experiences in order to grow. So that's why I am against suicide. I don't even like usually using the word because you never can tell what the bots are going to do with that. And you can read that document about that on the Heaven's Gate website, the position against the S word. And you'll see that there's 2 conditions there. For humans and then for those that didn't want to lose their soul. Which I took a chance by leaving, a big chance by leaving. And I don't know. I don't know where my soul is at. I'm not the judge of that. But I do know that I started to get some help from the next level when I after I went public, after they left, to talk about them. Because I knew that was not a popular thing to do. And so at least I had enough mind in me to be willing to, take a chance on a positive in that regard, even though it wasn't a positive to um, the people in the world observing the story being talked about necessarily. But some might have been, because there are a bunch of people that it seems like for the last little while, every time I uh, did food delivery, I was somebody was commenting on my shirt, liking it, and it just says, "What if they are right?" with the words "Heaven's Gate" on the top. So it's not breaking any copyrights or trademarks, since that's Heaven's Gate is a news story. If Lucifer even sees you growing into, yeah, I already read that. Okay, I guess I'll go back to the chat before I end the stream. Oh, UFO pilot, hello. Autistic vegan is here. I'm way too high to understand completely, but it's nice to see you, Sawyer. Cheers. Well, cool. I mean, it's good to have you hanging in here. Um, Rise Above says, when I first started watching you, always had a jar of it you were drinking, laughing out loud. I still got one, but it's a different jar. Right? You're talking about the one that's tall. It's actually a salsa jar from Tostitos. And this one's a pickle jar. Joseph Coates says that what if they were right shirt was originally sold on Rick Cody's website, right? That's correct. I believe that's correct. I think he even put that on mugs, and he also, I think, had something else maybe, and he had the away team patches. And, he wasn't trying to make money doing that. He was trying to pay to continue to do that. And that was completely in accordance with what Doe taught. Even talked about it in the letter that went to Mark and Sarah. That the things in storage, the items of value, among the items of value could be sold in order to pay for the living expenses of those that were doing the dissemination task. And Rick Cody was the first one to do the dissemination task that I know about. That's it. Aha. From Rise Above. Yeah. Right. That's the jar. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. I hope there's been some value, and I hope you will go listen to some of these tapes. Not for me, but then you'll see more. You can't help but see more. Even if you turn it into a negative, you'll see more. You'll have more ammunition, because there's plenty of things to criticize them about in the human kingdom. But not anything that's illegal. They didn't do anything illegal or immoral, harm anybody, abuse anybody in any way, shape, or form. There was no punishments. And they weren't even direct with people that they didn't feel like could handle it easily. But everybody had to be willing to take correction from our partners and from our overseers, from our uh, T and O's helpers, or or those helpers after T left, which were the same helpers, Livery and Jan Odie. Not that they walked around dishing out correction to everybody. I didn't like correcting my partner. It made for a bad vibe in my mind. I didn't know how they were going to handle it. So I shut up a lot of times. That wasn't good. That wasn't being the best class member I could be. Because I was I was afraid my feelings were going to be hurt. Well, if I said it in the right way, to where I wasn't, like putting the person down or anything, or trying to rub it in their face if they did something that didn't seem like it was behavior from a member of the next level. Uh, you know, um, if I did it, best I could, and the person responded poorly, which did happen a number of times, and hopefully they would recognize it if they responded poorly back to me, and me back to them when someone was brought to my attention. And it was sure defensiveness was a huge difficulty for a bunch of people. The first thing some people want to do, including myself, is say, "No, that doesn't apply to me. That's not me. No, or why are you pointing that out when you could do this, and you do that?" But that's beside the point. Does it apply to you or not? And it doesn't mean everything they say automatically applies either. If the shoe fit, when you examine it. So we ended up having a procedure that was when your partner brought something up to your attention to say, "Thank you, I'll examine that." And but that didn't stop individuals that really valued what their partner is saying from, learning more about it. Of course, learning more about it can be also used as part of the defense, right? To show them that they heard it in the wrong way, or they didn't know what I meant when I said that. And so they were under the most intense training program you could imagine, and they were having to train their own vehicle using the tools that T&O gave us of how to think about everything and how to approach that training and how to handle these vehicles. Okay, I think that was the notification. Kathy just sent it to me, right? You didn't? She did not. Yes, I do want to bring a close to the stream. And so, good night, folks.